If you're a business owner and you keep making bad decisions based on just revenue, monthly expenses, and your bank balance at the end of the month, you need to start defining your break even point, what your safety margin is, and your profitable days or months. Because I know it's super simple to just look at revenue, expenses in your bank account to make business decisions, but these are where you should actually be making the business decisions. For example, if your safety margin is way too low, but you're profitable, you might buy a truck that you couldn't afford. So let me show you how to fix this. What you want to start with is your break-even revenue. Now, you calculate that by taking your fixed cost and divide it by your gross margin percentage. So in this example here, maybe you have fixed rent of $42,000 a month, and after your services, you keep 40% of your revenue. Now we extrapolate that, and your break-even revenue is $105 a month, or $1,260,000 a year. And if you take a look at the end of the month, every dollar above $105,000 is actual profit. And the flip side, every dollar below that is a loss. And you should be making decisions as a result of this profit based on your break even revenue, not your total revenue. But now let's talk about the components that go into this. Now, how do we generate fixed costs and variable costs? Well, it's pretty simple. Fixed costs are anything that will happen and be incurred no matter what. So you have to pay rent or your lease, you pay yourself your salary, you pay your admin and support, you have to pay your loans, you have to pay your insurance, and finally you have to pay for your software and you have to pay for your marketing. These are just a few examples of items that are fixed each month. So go through your books and add up all your fixed costs or mark things as fixed cost if you haven't already, so you can just easily calculate this total amount at the end of the month. Now, your variable cost, on the other hand, is your product or cost of goods sold, which can be taken as a percentage of revenue. For example, if you made $100,000 in revenue, 50,000 of that is being applied to cost of goods sold. So it's 50% of revenue. Your direct labor per job can also be considered your variable costs. And then finally, your commissions, which can be calculated as a percentage of sales. Now, one thing to note about variable costs here, you should be choosing the most accurate way to measure these. And there are a myriad of different ways. Don't be creative in minimizing your expenses. You want to be accurate with your expenses. Because on paper, it could make you look rich, but in reality, you're making stupid decisions that leave you broke. So to get your gross margin percentage, we simply take your revenue, we subtract the variable costs, and then we take these two numbers, the result of it, and divide it by total revenue. So as you can see here, 125K minus 75K equals $50,000, and we take $50,000 and divide that by the revenue. This gets us our gross margin percentage. So let's take a look at what happens if you don't have this information. So if you don't know your break-even point, it looks like your Q3 revenue dips by $88,000. You should have been breaking even and making profit above $105,000, but you didn't know. And because you didn't know about the $88,000 dip, you decided to hire somebody for $65,000. And for the full 3 months, you're in the red at $51,000, meaning this cost you $130,000. This is a result of bad accounting. If you want great accounting, send me an email and we'd love to work with you. You can find it in the description below. And then if you did know your break even point, you saw that Q3 was dipping, so you held off on hiring this individual. You knew the breakdown was $105,000 a month, so you targeted for that. And you cut a bunch of expenses and built a cash buffer to stay safe. And by making these wise decisions, you stayed above break even for all 3 months, meaning you made $130,000 in the end instead of losing $130,000 a month. It's the same business and revenue, but because you made great decisions, you were profitable and didn't lose money. So it's important you do your accounting right and not underestimate the power of what it can show you. It's like driving a car blindfold if you don't have good accounting. And these are three things you can do as a business owner to make sure you're on top of your game. First of all, you just label everything as fixed cost or variable cost. You don't even have to do variable cost. You could just do your fixed costs. And this can apply to every single bill you get, like your electricity or your rent. And it's super simple. And it's like budgeting for your life. If you've done a budget before, you can easily do this. Then you calculate your gross margin percentage, which is simply your revenue minus all your variable cost, then divide that by your revenue. In other words, you take your gross margin and divide it by your total revenue. Then you take that gross margin percentage and divide your fixed cost by that. In our example is $42,000 divided by 40%, which leads to $105,000 as your break even point. And all you got to do is update it every time your fixed costs change and you know your break even point. This might take like 30 minutes or an hour. And honestly, the hardest part is having clean books to do this. If you want someone who can give you CFO level insights, send me an email in the description below. We'd love to work with you and fix your accounting system so you can make a shit ton of cash. Because without good accounting, you don't even know which direction to go in. And we saw in the example, you can make a bad hiring decision that could ruin your entire business. Because he lost $51,000, he could have had to shut down his entire operation. They couldn't have afforded storage for their warehouse or their materials, and bada bing, bada boom, you're out of business. This happens all the time. So if you want to gain financial insight into your business and someone who can tell you what to actually do, send me an email in the description. We'd love to work with you. Otherwise, follow for more practical advice.